The public schools really arose out of an understanding by the framers of our Constitution and the early leaders of our country that a democracy truly depends upon an educated citizenry. And you can't leave that to chance. You have to be intentional about it. And there were a number of different ways that that came into being, but as an example, when the state of Nebraska submitted its constitution to become a state, when the territory of Nebraska submitted its constitution to become a state, it had to provide in its constitution for the free education of citizens of the state of Nebraska. That has just been a bedrock foundation of our country, and very, very different from the countries from which the immigrants came that founded this country, because education in European countries was not necessarily public, and it wasn't available to all. And we've struggled, I think, as a country with the available to all. It took a while before we really meant that when we talked about children of color, when we really meant that when we talked about children with disabilities, when we really meant that when we talked about children who don't speak English. But nevertheless, that's been a value, and we get better and better all the time at acting on that value, that it is education for all, and that education is essential for a democratic society. It is a public obligation to do so, and therefore a benefit to the public that is assumed by the public. And the phrase, the common school, really arose out of, it was a common experience held in common by all of the people who would gather at the commons as part of a community. So the very public nature of public education, I think, is a hallmark, and it's a bedrock principle of this country that says we need people to have had experiences in common. And that's true whether children, as they're growing up and as they become adults, if they come from families of great wealth or families of great poverty, if they come from families who are first generation in this country or families who are fifth generation in this country, if they are rural or urban, the ideal is common experience for those who gather in the commons, and that only happens through public education. I always talked about it as public education is it's school for all of the children of all of the people. And my good friend and former LPS board member Ed Zimmer would also say that public education means the public is investing in that, and the public has oversight of that. And I think those are just bedrock principles for continued growth and development in this community and in this country.